Welcome, data enthusiasts. I'm Joseph, co-founder of Zuma Recruitment. We are the consultancy focused 100% on data tech professionals in and around the Berlin region. And this is our podcast, Data for Good, connecting you with all things data. Today, we're joined by Christopher Baumgärtner. Christopher is ML expert, machine learning expert, and owner-operator of Durayne Technologies. Durayne Technologies is a data science and machine learning consultancy for the German tech industry. Christopher, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Good. And you're very welcome. And I know that you're a busy guy, serving your clients' needs. So yeah, let's get right into it. I understand that today's topic, broadly speaking, is around staying on top of modern machine learning and the revolution that is machine learning. Data science and machine learning, I understand them to be heavily research-based, and lots of machine learning kind of stays that way in terms of great research findings, but no end product. From what I can see, bringing machine learning models to production can be quite challenging, really difficult. What are some of the common problems that you've encountered in this area?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you started with the observation that it's very research-based, and you're obviously right, because data science it's not been a long time since it's moved out from the laboratories of universities into the, let's call it, real world. And it's this observation that you made, it actually connects to one of the big problems when it comes to bringing machine learning models to real product. Because oftentimes my observation is that, well, some data scientists or some people who have a background in the academic part of data science are still very much focused on this research-based approach, where you work in isolation on a very small problem and try to solve it. And at some point, when you're finished with it, then you bring it out to the real world, to the other people who then can use it, can make use of it. And in my experience, if you try to do the same thing outside of academia in a company that builds product, that's where the problems begin, because this approach will not work when you are trying to build the product. And this even boils down into how, as data science manager, you are trying to build teams. Like the danger in that regard is that you build the same island solutions or the island type of a team as you have in academia, where you employ data scientists, you employ machine learning experts, you put them in a room, and you expect, because they're experts, at some point something will come out of it that then I can use in my product. And this very, very often fails. And in my experience, it's a much better approach to directly involve data scientists as much as possible in the context of the company that's building a product. Like my first approach with the team is always to try to be part of building a product end to end and see where it goes and then improving it. And this approach then also affects how you build a team. Because what you normally don't want to do is you don't have people who are over-specialized. The data scientists who know only algorithms and who are also only motivated to work with algorithms and nothing else. What you want instead is, of course, you want to have that type of knowledge, but beyond that, you want to have people who are more context aware and know things about backend engineering, DevOps, but also how a product is built and how to interact with stakeholders. So bottom line is, like this isolation approach. I think the time for that is over, and we will see that more and more in the coming years, that it will become less research-based as it was in the past and more, let's call it, real-life based.
Interesting. So having a practical, hands-on experience and knowledge on delivering a product, and also having strong stakeholder awareness but communication skills, with them not being isolated but rather maybe being embedded or semi-embedded into operational teams.
Yeah, that's one approach that I can organize it, right? You can embed the data scientist inside of other teams, but it's not really necessary. Like even if you have an own data science team that has its own internal setup, its own management structures, you can still set it up in a way that the interaction with other teams is very strong. And the only thing that's bound to result in problems if you don't have this interaction. If the data scientists have this approach of building machine learning without the constant daily drive to build something up that creates value to some outside customer by being integrated in the product that creates this value.
To my next question, creating value to deliver your product. There's a lot of hype and has been universally in business for at least 6 months around large language models. What do you think about this innovation and the progress of this innovation? Do you think the progress is temporary, or do you think this evolution is going to continue to explode at the rate that it has done?
Yeah. So obviously, coming from that field, I was as hyped as anybody else was when I first played around with ChatGPT, and I was like, "Wow, we are this far, and this is how good it works. That's fantastic." As to your question whether or not this is a hype that might maybe go away or at least diminish a little bit, well, there are always ups and downs. And of course, in the past, we had this AI winter thing where after a hype of AI, suddenly no one talked about AI anymore. But I think that will not happen anymore. I mean, the value that the current level of AI and artificial intelligence models like ChatGPT bring to people is just so obvious that it will not just vanish. I mean, ChatGPT is such an extreme example because you do not have to explain to people outside of the field why this is valuable and how this will create value. You just need to somebody to interact with it. And it's immediately obvious that this is helpful. And you have the same trajectory with regard to other AI systems outside of the current LLM hype, where you also have more and more things where the value is so obvious, so it will not vanish. That being said, of course, with every hype phase and every interest in a certain topic, there's always bound to be a phase where a lot of ideas come up, which will die at some point. I mean, if you go back far enough, think about technology like the internet. Like the internet, like when you go back to probably the huge hype was the 90s, where it was obvious that this is the next big thing. But even then, you had a lot of companies that went bankrupt, which resulted in the dot-com bubble. Everybody thought this is the next big thing, we have to invest, but a lot of the details of the ideas that came up during that didn't turn out to be valuable. And I also think this is bound to happen with regard to the AI hype that we see now. A lot of things will come up, a lot of ideas will come up, a lot of companies will come up for these ideas that claim that they can create value, and many of them will not do it. So bottom line is, for somebody who's interested in the field, which everybody should be, is definitely everybody should be knowledgeable in this area and be part of this development. But I would also advise a little bit of caution with regard to where you put your money, so to speak, where you put your time. What do you think will be the thing that is part of that direction of more artificial intelligence in society? And because some of these things, as with the internet hype, they would just go away.
I've seen in my searches as a recruiter, I've seen heaps of pure AI product-based businesses, and I wonder if they are what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Because they seem to be offering a tool or tools that are useful, but I can't help but think that those tools will simply be absorbed by larger businesses, and those small businesses, that won't be needed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the next thing, right? Like the tooling, the competition instead of this tooling approach, where you just say, hey, we have another AI, will be very challenging. I mean, even if you build now another ChatGPT, it will be hard to compete with the current ChatGPT. And even if you build something that's very specialized, like let's say a very specialized language model, you cannot say, or you cannot foresee how long it will take for the language models that are more general, like ChatGPT, to have the same type of functionality. Because this is one of the strengths. I mean, one of the strengths of ChatGPT is it's not a chatbot for a specific domain, it's a general chatbot. And so these approaches, as you said, like just building a tool and then somebody can use it, that's kind of challenging. In my opinion, what might be more successful is to look at what are the problems out there, as with any product, and then build an AI specifically to solve that type of problem, and then go from there. So not going from the approach, let's build a good AI, but going from the approach of somebody has a problem somewhere, let's build a product based on AI that solves it.
I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I wonder whether that's also what I'm referring to. People have seen a current problem and they're building a whole business around it, whereas there are other tech businesses that are going to build products that meet those problems with solutions and several other problems with solutions. Yeah, I suppose it's an assessment that entrepreneurs and business leaders have to figure out whether the problem that they're solving is going to be around in 5 years or more.
Yeah, yeah.
Or whether they're building a product simply to be acquired by big business.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but what you just described is, I think, the general risk of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, it's not something new with regard to AI. You had this before too, that you don't know, hey, how big is it? It's a problem. We guess it's a big one. How long will it be a problem? And will somebody else build something that's so much better than what I have in mind? So well, that's kind of so risky of to take.
All right, thanks. You've talked about large language models and them being the beginning, or just the beginning, or just the tip of the iceberg. What innovation do you foresee in the next, say, 12 months? I don't want to say what's going to be the next big thing, but how are we going to build on this in the near future or the next 12 months?
Yeah. So again, like, I mean, if you take such a short time frame, like next 12 months, I think the main difference or the main development will be to integrate these new technologies into, well, different parts of professional and private life. I mean, if you look at ChatGPT, the most obvious example how it can be used in my domain is, of course, helping coding. I mean, if you look back, even the development of the past 40 years, right? If you go back in pre-internet times, coding software was hugely difficult and involved a lot of looking into books, how to do things. Then the internet came and search engines came, and you could just Google something, or if you go back further, you could type into Yahoo or whatever, and you could get answers. And suddenly there was a huge improvement with regard to how quick you could code something. And now with ChatGPT, it's even quicker. With ChatGPT, you can just type in, I have a problem, please write me the code for that. And it will, of course, maybe not write you the whole software, at least not on its own from one input, but at least write you the code snippet. So it's, again, like a turbocharged way to do software development. And of course, the same goes for other areas, right? Software development is just one example. The same area goes for writing books, writing white papers or whatever. And I think, like, for the next 12 months, again, like this integrating this type of technology into these processes, into the work life, so to speak, like interacting with them as a developer or as a writer or whatever profession you are, this will be something for the next 12 months. If you go beyond that time, like, and then you ask, okay, what's the next big thing beyond just using these things? I think one part of artificial intelligence that's still not on the level where the value is obvious is if you leave the specialized areas. So if you look how science approached AI, it was a very reductionist approach in the sense of we have this huge field of intelligence and we divide it into different parts like computer vision, language understanding, reasoning, and then you divide these into subparts. You can vision, object detection, scene recognition, and whatever, and then you try to solve them. And we are getting better and better at that. ChatGPT is one example in the language domain where we get very good at it. But if you have things where you combine these things and you need to do them together, this is still something where I think a lot of improvements can be made and will be made. Think about something like embodied AI, where you have robots, which you already have. You have industrial robots. On the other hand, you have language models, which kind of understand you and can give an output to your input. But combining these two things, where you can interact with natural language with a robot, and the robot then acts in the real world with arms and legs and whatever, actuators, and can do something for you, that's still something where there's also been much progress, obviously. You can find examples of that, but still, there's still a lot to be done to bring it to the next level where it can be used in the daily life. And I think for the time beyond the 12 months, let's more think about 5 to 10 years, I think this is something that will be very, very big.
You mean specifically the connection between hard and software?
Yeah, also, but yeah, I mean, you can talk about any the connection between any two modalities, right? I mean, also the connection between I don't know a language and videos, or yeah, but language and robots is some kind of like the obvious thing, where you have like the real world and the language interaction.
I'm just thinking of Apple's new vision product as well, which we won't go into. I want to think about the modern machine learning engineer in light of this real technical pull on them to keep evolving. For example, large language models. What will be the demand on those people? Will the demands remain, or will it get much more difficult for them to outwit and outsmart and be extra advanced in their work?
Yeah, but the thing is, what I mentioned at the beginning, this trajectory from moving machine learning expertise out of the labs towards the real world.
Yeah.
And suddenly this relates to the skill set, where you have the technical skill set, but you also have skills beyond that. I think that trajectory will stay on, also because of the tooling of artificial intelligence that gets better and better. Like think about it. What I just said about AI being helpful with writing code, right? What it means is, as a developer or data scientist, you do not need to know, or at least from memory, know every detail of every part of the code, because you can just tell an AI, please write me part of that code that does something. Now, the data scientist in turn then will move to a more higher level of organization and work with these outputs by saying, okay, I don't have to write it myself. I don't have to know the details, but I have to understand it. And I have to understand how I fit the sub-solutions together. And I also have to understand how I fit them together in a way that they solve a problem that somebody out of my own technical team wants, like the product manager or the domain expert or the sales people or whatever. So again, because of this trajectory from the labs towards more general approach, this will continue to an even more general approach, where the skill set of data scientists has to even widen beyond where it should be now.
Interesting. I would have thought that those stakeholder and business skills are going to need to continue to evolve, but the data scientists and machine learning engineers are going to have to become much more specific to certain domains.
Yeah, I don't think so. The thing is, because also with regard to the tooling approach, there are way more, let's put it, levels of abstraction between the actual functionality of a tool and how to use it. What I mean is it becomes easier and easier to use things. Either because there are software packages that you use in code, or there are actually software that you use via REST calls or whatever. And you can see this development even outside data science. If you look at software engineering, it becomes more and more important to know what's out there and how it generally works and how to use it and to stick it together, how to use APIs to solve a certain problem, than to actually know how to build it by yourself. And this is more like this widen your gaze effect. And I think in data science, we see the same progression there too. If you know how to solve a problem and how to interact with AI systems and how to interact with how to understand other software products and how to integrate them, that's the thing that will make a successful data scientist in the future.
Brilliant. Well, thinking directly then and thinking about the skills and tools that ML engineers and data scientists are going to need, how should they prepare for this evolution of machine learning, this constant evolution, to adapt and to stay commercially valuable?
Yeah, right. So I kind of have to repeat a little bit and put more detail on what I said before, because obviously with respect to the hype that's now coming again with regard to AI and will become more and more, what you will also see is that there will be just more of the tools that you can use as data scientists to solve a problem. So what this means is that the whole concept of educating yourself more and more and learning more and more, which was important for the last 10, 20 years, obviously, but this will become even more important, that you have to constantly be on your toes and constantly look out what is out there. And of course, that sounds maybe a little bit disturbing to people working in the field, because it seems like you constantly have to look into books and courses and on the internet what is out there. On the plus side, because of what I mentioned with regard to these levels of abstraction that are built in, using these tools, understanding them, and understanding how to use them will probably become easier and easier. So that's kind of the plus side. You have to learn more different things, but each of these different things will be easier to understand. So that's one of the things that I would say that people have to look, data scientists, people in the field have to look into more and more things that they can use to solve a problem. And obviously the other part, I also already mentioned it, the whole area of skills outside the technical ones will become more and more important. I already mentioned like the interaction with stakeholders, what in general, like what you discover soft skills, also the idea of networking, right? Either inside the company or if you're self-employed outside the company. If you say, I have a great idea for a great AI system that does something, but it's not only about building it, it's also about knowing who might be who might be interested into using such a thing for his or her own purpose. And this can work if you build your own product that you want to sell, but it can also work in the company that you're working. And imagine you're a data scientist and you have a great idea, knowing in your company who is the right product manager or host, who is the right C-level person that wants to move in that direction. This is so important. It's more important than just improving a model by 3% of a certain data science metric. The important thing will be to say, hey, this is really good. This creates value. I can explain to you why it creates value. Let's go in that direction.
I love that. That speaks to the end product, I think. And you might also suggest that in terms of their machine learning engineers networking, they might find a problem and a solution for somebody in the marketing department or operations or talent acquisition. So with strong networking skills, they could go to them with this specific position and this specific problem and solution and take it up the chain from there. Okay. You'd mentioned earlier that perhaps it might be somewhat disturbing or concerning about always needing to be learning and looking over your shoulder. I'd suggest that the modern workplace is wholly about embracing change and change being the only constant in life. So yeah, that's some sage advice for data science and data professionals generally. What about people who are less technical or less engineering
Yeah.
inclined. I'm talking about the product managers, the CEOs, the project leaders. Not everybody is an AI expert like yourself, and we still have to deal with the change, or at least the impact that it has on us. How do we prepare?
Yeah. So it's kind of like the same concept of being more of a generalist and going beyond your field of expertise. It's just the other way around than from data scientists, right? Data scientists have this technical expertise and they have to learn skills outside of that. And people who are not into the technical domain, they have maybe a lot of these skills I just mentioned, as you got to soft skills, skills in communication, skills in building networks. And what they will have to do is develop at least a rudimentary understanding of how machine learning and AI works. If you go back a couple of years, it was probably possible for people outside of data science to just say, yeah, we also have a data science department. They are doing something with AI. I'm not into that much. It sounds good, and that's it. But if you see the development, how much AI is integrated like everywhere, literally everywhere, that's this approach to just not understand the basic concepts of artificial intelligence is not a feasible one anymore for people outside the field. They have to at least understand the basics of it. I mean, look at somebody like you, like in your job as a recruiter, right? And finding the right people, the people who are the right fit in companies who are working with AI, even if they are not AI specialists. You would have to ask the right questions to the candidates. You would have to ask the right questions to the people searching for people. So all of these things mean that you have to at least have a rudimentary understanding of the concepts of artificial intelligence. Now, again, on the plus side, obviously people who are not from the technical field might find that disturbing, because if they would have liked to be in that domain and learn things in that domain, maybe they would have gone like that. So there might be reasons why they didn't choose that as a profession. But on the plus side is, again, it's easier and easier to learn these things. The best example is actually ChatGPT. You can just type in asking questions about how does AI work, how does training work, what is a machine learning model, and it will give you easy answers. So we are not talking about going back to university or spending hours and hours in online courses to learn these concepts. It's easier than ever to actually get an understanding that enables you to communicate with people from the area.
Yes, and to that point, it reminds me that several searches for answers that I input into ChatGPT and Bard are, list XYZ, or the definition of XYZ for a teenager, for a school child. So you can simplify it for the non-technical professionals and then build up from there. I'm conscious of time, Christopher, and I want to wrap up with a final question. Thinking about the evolution of machine learning, and also thinking about you going into businesses as an ML expert and helping to advance businesses, what can businesses and data professionals do to stay ahead of the curve? What general advice and practical advice would you give to these people in the business and data field?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty obvious, like that every business that wants to thrive, let's put it like that, has to be part of this whole development of artificial intelligence. I'm not saying everybody should just jump on the wagon and say like, okay, this is something that we focus on. Obviously not, but it needs to be, the question needs to be asked in any business: how do we integrate it into what we are doing? And of course, I'm a little bit biased when I give this advice, obviously, because what I would advise people to do is to employ somebody like me who can go to their businesses and say, hey, this is how you should use it. This is how you should integrate it. Because one mistake, obviously, they can make, and now we are going back to what I said in the very beginning, is they could just try to get into this topic by just employing some experts and hoping that something will come out of it for their business. And as I repeated several times, this is, well, the rate of failure for this approach is pretty high. So what you should do is think very clearly, like, how can AI help you? How can it create value for your specific business? And how can we go in that direction? And either you have your own understanding on how it works, perfect, that you don't need somebody like me. But if you don't, then it might be a good idea to ask somebody who's built these things before and ask questions like, okay, how can we create value using AI into our very specific business, and in which direction should we go?
Brilliant. I feel like our next conversation should be around how to invest in AI for your first time, something to that effect.
Yeah, gladly.
We'll keep that one for later. Christopher, that was great. Thanks very much for that introduction or overview as to the evolution of machine learning. And yeah, for anyone who has questions of Christopher or us at Zuma, feel free to send them through. And yeah, see you all next week. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Ciao.